We're going for a walk. We got rentals. Rents here are, as you guys know, they're pretty high. So I don't know what they're asking for these units, and I don't know which units are available. But there's some units available. Got a little hitch in my giddy up. My right foot, mentioned it before, but I got this first metatarsal it was getting like a bunion and swollen, and I've been treating it myself, and I can pop that joint now and all that. But every once in a while, it's been about 2 years since this has happened, it just gets inflamed, and I don't know why. So it's very, very painful. It's hard to walk on and all that stuff. So best thing to do is walk on it. I was going to ride the bike, but the van is set up in a way that it would be a bitch to put the bike in the van. And like I was saying, I could use the exercise too. Anyhow, oil can. That's what we're talking about, because I was having a little bit of a leak. It was a little weeping, wasn't a big deal from the timing cover on the Astro van, and it's something I needed to deal with. I elected to bring it to the shop because when you look at how the timing cover goes on, the right way to do it is involved. We're going to talk about that later when I get the parts back after I pick up the van. As far as oil goes, it's a subject, that I talk about from time to time on here. Sarah, our favorite YouTuber, her latest video, all about the tar pits, the McKittrick or something, tar pits. Watch that video. I'll put a link to it in the description of this video. If I forget, please remind me in the comments. So it was really cool because she actually found an oil waterfall, which was asphalt. And so she's walking up this and she's telling you about it, and she shows you a I don't know what you call it, a drawing basically on the screen of how where there's tectonic plates, plates rub and oil can seep up. You don't need to be in that situation for oil to be seeping up out of the ground. This is something I've discussed before. As I'm making this video, millions of gallons of oil are just seeping up out of the ground all over the planet. Ocean floors, on every continent, on land. It's just happening. You can go to the beach here, on some of the beaches here, and get tar on your feet. That's because of the oil that's seeping up out of the floors of the ocean. And I bring this up because these ignorant people these days about oil, they just don't know what the earth produces it. It's a naturally occurring thing. It's nothing to be afraid of. But and of course these anti-oil people are a thing, right? So that whole thing with them with the no more oil, it's so silly. The clothes they're wearing are made out of oil. The phones they're talking on are made out of oil. I don't need to beat this to death. You guys know where I'm going with this, but I just wanted to kind of bring it up a little bit here. We're always going to need oil, and not just for fuel. I hope we can get away from fuel and gasoline and move on to I think hydrogen's going to be the way to go. They're already making hydrogen vehicles right now. I think that's the future. It's cleaner. It'll be good. But we're still always going to need oil for other products, for lubrication, manufacturing rubber. Again, I don't have to get into this too deeply with you guys. You understand. So watch that video. I think it's pretty cool. And it's just an interesting point I wanted to make because I had an oil leak, which we're about to talk about here in about a second. just about there. If you see a kid behind me, just know I was walking behind him, and he had these earbuds in. Can't really hear me, but he let out a large fart, loud, audible fart. Right as I was walking up to him, I'm like, nice. He just jumped. He realized I was behind him. So this is it here. SMG Auto. Alright, just picked up the van. We'll take a look on the underside here in a little bit. I'm going to head over to the shop. There's a lot I have to do. I think I'm going to go over to Anna Walt first because I got a lumber order I got to pay for, and then I have to get that delivered. So, all right. But anyhow, like I said, I was talking to Irvin, and he's been here like 11 years, I think. Again, certified ASC, certified mechanic, great guy, totally trust him, very happy. Now, I've got the parts here that I'm going to show you guys when I get to the shop. That came off of the van, and I want to talk about it with you so that you understand, because when I saw the cover, the timing cover, it was obvious to me that to do that job correctly, you should have to pull the oil pan. And I'm going to describe all that to you and show you, and we'll talk about it, so stick around. Alright, so one of the things on the oil too that I wanted to mention is just the way that it was described for a long time, that a lot of people still are attached to in their minds. Because when I was a kid, you know, it's fossil fuels. They're saying it was, we were told when I was a kid that it was from dead dinosaurs and plants from millions of years ago, which helps to support the notion, which is incorrect, that it's a finite resource. When I was a kid in school in the 70s, and you can look this up, I mean, they told us we were going to run out of oil possibly by the end of the 1980s, for sure by 2000. We'd all be starving to death by the year 2000 from overpopulation. And, you know, and we were about to enter into an ice age, right? So by the year 2000, we were supposed to be in an ice age. None of that happened, but all their solutions for that were all these regulations, all these other things that took money out of everybody's pocket, made your lives more complicated and more miserable, and it turns out that none of that was true, and they're still doing the same thing today with this. So we also know today that there is oil in places where they told us there wasn't any more oil. So oil's being produced inside the earth, and they still don't really know from what actually creates it. That's the fascinating thing. And there are articles going back into the 1950s in science journals and science magazines. I spent a long time looking into this, years and years ago, so I can't recall it all, and I'm not a scientist, but all this stuff exists. So if you're curious about it, look it up. But these notions, these theories have been out there for a very, very long time, longer than I've been alive. It is more accepted as reality now, but you have to go looking for that, because they want you to believe it's a finite thing so they can keep charging all this money for it. But it was a funny thing, because Sarah mentioned in her video about this guy she knows, and I met these guys. They're older now, but they were engineers in the oil business in the Middle East back in the 1970s. And we were having a conversation one day, and, you know, I was just trying to talk to him about what I think. And he started getting really technical with me about all the different types of oil and the different ways that we extract oil and all these things that he wasn't telling me anything I didn't know. He was just talking about it on a level where if I was taking a test on it, I would fail, because I don't know all the terminology and all the acronyms and exactly how all this stuff works, but I have a general knowledge of it that is correct. And he was talking around the points I was trying to make about when we were energy independent and how we should just be taking oil from our own country, become a net exporter again, get our own energy, stop buying from other countries, make ourselves powerful, make the bad actors in the world weaker, because they won't have as much money to propagate wars and everything else. And I said to him at one point, I said, you can't tell me that buying oil from another country and then shipping it here through oil tankers with the insurance you got to pay for the cruise, everything else, is cheaper than just producing it here naturally. You know, and the companies that get the oil here, a lot of it's on like the public land, so they're paying rent for that. So the government's making money on that. I'm not going to get all into the economics of it, but the point is, it's way more affordable, and that's why gas was cheap for us when Trump was in office compared to what we're paying now. So it's just a thing with this oil thing. There's a lot of stuff that people believe that's not true, and having people believe things that aren't true is how the powers that be can control us and take money out of your pockets and create these nonsensical regulations and all of it. So it's just a thing that's always kind of on my mind, and I thought it was super cool that Sarah showed that this is a naturally occurring thing. It's literally just bubbling out of the ground everywhere. If you go down La Cienega where Stalker is, there's oil derricks, oil rigs all over the place. If you look at old pictures of Los Angeles, there are oil rigs everywhere. There's still oil rigs all over LA that you can't see because they've built structures around them because people that live in the area don't want to look at them. There's some here in Hollywood. I think there's some downtown. There's some in the valley. It's pretty wild. And my point there is, if you look at the La Brea tar pits, which she mentions, maybe I'll take her there when she's here. It's sitting right there, a big giant pit of oil, asphalt. And there's these shacks all around the La Brea tar pits that have their tar pits where they're still pulling animals out of all the time. It's wild, man. It's wild. It's as if, this is what blows me away. It seems like, because the earth is producing the oil. It really is wild because it seems like the earth is producing exactly what we need to have helped us get to where we are technologically. And it's going to remain producing oil for us. Now, that doesn't mean we should just use that. We should be advancing ourselves, technologically speaking, when it comes to fuel. And that's why I really believe it's going to be hydrogen or some other stuff that we just haven't figured out yet. The new technologies are being developed every day. And, you know, if you're of a mindset from decades ago where you believe certain things are too volatile for us to use, well, there's technologies now that make it far more safe. We know that now. So these things are happening, and it's wonderful. But we are always going to still need petroleum. We're always going to still need oil. That is just how it is. So wrap your head around that, get okay with it, and let's just move on as mature adults discussing it in reality, all right? I'm almost at the shop. I'm going to show you the stuff and talk about the van. All right, so these are the two parts that have been replaced. This is your timing cover. This is the inside of it, but I wanted to show you this blue thing here. This is a rubber seal that goes on your oil pan, right? So the engine block stops here, and then your oil pan's underneath, and your crank goes through here, and your crank pulls the oil up out of the pan and up over everything else. And this black plastic part right here is part of this timing cover, right? Let me see if I can pull that out of there with some rubber gloves and show you what it looks like. All right, by the way, that whole oil discussion thing, that was just because I was leaking oil, man, and she had just did that video, and it's something that I think about all the time. I just wanted to put that out there, but let's get back to what the video is really about. So, I don't know if I can get this out of here. It might be glued in too much. Yeah, that thing, somebody put some RTV in this thing, I guess, at least on the corners. I got a screwdriver. Oops, don't go anywhere. All right, let's see if we can get this out of here. A little persuasion, maybe. There we go. Siliconed in there. Okay, so this is how your timing cover comes, right? And I saw that, and I thought, gee whiz, the only way to do that right is to pull the oil pan, because that seal has to go back on there. You want to put this on the engine, you want to put this in, then you want to put your oil pan back on. Okay, and I wanted you guys to see this, because I'm going to talk to you about this process here in a moment. So there's that. The other thing I wanted you to notice, get these gloves off here so I could work with the camera. If you can see here on the harmonic balancer, you see all the cracks in that rubber? When it gets to that point, that's when you know that this thing is not doing its job to its optimum potential. All right, so those are the two things I just wanted to quickly point out to you. Now, when I was running into issues with the vibration, after we put the engine lift brackets on, before I realized Dave made those wrong for me. His jig got knocked around, we fixed it, everything's fine. But one of the things people pointed out to me was the harmonic balancer, so I ordered one at that time. I realized that wasn't what the issue was, so I held on to it, obviously, and I was able to use it now. When I looked at the pan and I saw how it should be done properly, I went ahead and looked at videos on YouTube. And what I saw was, shade tree mechanics doing everything from the front. And what they were doing, some of them were grinding off this lip on the cover and then forcing it into place and using RTV and silicone and whatnot to hopefully keep it from leaking. And I knew that just wasn't the right way to do it. So I talked to Irvin about it, and like he said, everything I knew was true. And for them to do this correctly, they also took the water pump off. I'm not sure why. It must have been in the way of a bolt or something, which is fine. So he had to get new oil pan gaskets. He had to get new gaskets for the oil filter system. He had to get a water pump gasket and whatever else. And I supplied him with this timing cover and the new harmonic balancer, which he put on. So everything's fine. It was supposed to be $780 for everything, which I think is okay. That's real money. You could do this yourself. Here's the thing. This is one of the beauties of it. And I didn't goof on him about this, but I just wanted to point it out to you guys. Because there's so much room now between the oil pan and the axle, you don't have to remove the axle to get the oil pan out. So on an all-wheel drive, you typically do, because it's practically resting on the axle. So you see how clean this is now. I just drove it around, and the new harmonic balancer is on there. And this should remain nice and clean and oil-free now for quite some time. And you can see on the bottom of my oil pan, right here, where it was wearing, because this pan was literally resting upon this axle when I bought the vehicle. Not good. All the steering linkage here is original. At some point I should probably upgrade that, but it's still working. I'm going to do the axles again when the track motive ones come in. But the next thing is, you'll see it's wet under here probably. That is from the Hydro Boost up above, so I've got to get the Hydro Boost replaced. So we talked about that. I'm just going to order one off of Rock Auto. It's like 240 bucks. There's a $60 core. If you were to send it to them, you get 60 bucks back. So it's under 200 bucks for the thing. They're all remanufactured. But I'm going to keep it. I've got a rebuild kit. I might sell it with the rebuild kit to somebody, or I might decide to rebuild it at some point. Keep it as a spare. I just don't think I'm going to need another one ever again. I think like this one lasted a pretty long time. It's a 2004. And I believe that if I put another one in, it's probably last until I don't have this vehicle anymore or I kick the bucket. But I'm just saying, I'm doing the video for you so that you understand. Yes, you could do this stuff yourself, but there's a procedure, order of operation to do things correctly. And so a lot of people who do it where they're doing it just from the front and they're not dropping the oil pan, and even if you just tried to like loosen the oil pan and drop it enough so you can fit it in there, it's just, you're making your life more difficult than it needs to be. Save your shekels, go to a reputable mechanic, talk to him about it, make sure it gets done right. That's all I'm saying. So new timing cover, new harmonic balancer. It does feel, I wasn't having any really major vibration anyhow, but driving through the city right now, I'll know more when I get it on the highway again, but even sitting at a stoplight, it's just dead. It's perfect. Everything's running good. And look, I baby this thing the way that I do, and I do things as correctly as possible so that I can beat the hell out of it. All right? If you're not doing these things right and you're beating the hell out of it, you are taking a major chance if you're out in the middle of nowhere wheeling it. The reason why there's so much space between the oil pan and the axle now is because the engine lift brackets that we figured out and Dave is making for you. And I'm going to be replacing mine. Mine are 2-inch lift. I'm going to go with the full 3-inch. I think that's what you should do if you got 3-inch body spacers. And when I do that, we'll talk about it. They asked me about my starter, and I pointed this out when I was doing the engine lift brackets last time, because the, I forget what that thing is called on the top of the starter, but it's where everything bolts together. It's a little loose there. I have another starter, and I was going to put it in, but it's still working. So I'm going to wait till it starts failing, and then I'll put the new one in. But I have that to do as well. But that's not a big deal. They pointed it out to me, and they would have put it in for me for nothing if I would have had it. And I didn't think they were going to remove the starter. So at any rate, they went through everything. Everything's fine. Last thing is this Hydra Boost, and then I'll be golden. All right. And George Carusos, if you're watching this is kind of what I've been waiting for. I know I did that crazy 5-hour drive, but driving to you is going to be like 8 hours or so, and I want to make sure this thing is dialed well before I do that trip. So that's it for now. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know it was a little all over the place as usual, but just pointing it out. Go ahead and look at your YouTube videos on how to do this, and you're going to see guys doing everything from the front and messing with this. And you really shouldn't do that if you don't want any leaks. You know what I'm saying? Also, I guess there are metal, like aftermarket covers for these, but after talking to a bunch of people about it and actual mechanics, they said there's nothing wrong with these plastics. This is how they came from the factory, and they last for a very long time. I think what happens is, and people don't want to admit it to themselves, is that, again, shade tree mechanics, which I would be considered, doing things with not the proper order of operation, doing things the way they think is fine, isn't, and that is what creates some of the problems that they end up with down the road. So again, I do a lot of my own work. You guys have seen me do it here, but there's just certain things when they crop up, I'd rather pay somebody to do it. That is just how it is. And for me, it's worth it with this vehicle. I use it for everything. It's my only vehicle. I intend on keeping this for a very long time. That's the way it is. So that's it for now. You guys have a good day. Be good to one another. I'll catch you in the next one. One last thing here I forgot to mention. So it was $780 to do that job plus. I had him flush the system again. When I first got the van, and when you first get your Astro van, these are older vehicles. One of the things you should do is a full system flush, because mine had sludge in it when I got it. I ended up flushing it 3 times in the first couple weeks of owning it, and I've had a couple issues when it's real hot and I'm driving it hard, and if I park it where the front end's higher than the rear end and the passenger side's higher than everything else, I'll get some overflow coming out of it for some reason. So I wanted him to flush the system for me again and burp it properly and everything, and everything's fine. They did it for me, but that was another $100. So in the end, I gave him a little bit more. I gave him $900 for everything. So that job, timing cover, harmonic balancer, I supplied those parts. He bought the gaskets, and flushing the whole system was $900. yes, you could have done it for less, but I dropped it off yesterday morning. I picked it up today. No problems. And if something goes wrong, I can go over there and they'll fix it. So to me, that was worth it. And that's it for now. Once again, have a great day. Be good to one another. I'll catch you in the next one.